Hey, so I had a whole bunch of messages in my inbox from yesterday's video, and to kind of set it up, I just want to answer the questions right in here. To kind of set it up is what I had stated yesterday, and what the question was the question was like, Sherry, how can you go feel love whenever there's no sign of love in your life? How can you go feel abundant whenever you're broken, you're homeless? Like how can you go feel worthy whenever your whole entire life you've been told the story that you're not? Like how can you just feel that whenever you have no real experience in your life? And so I want to turn it back and just start with this is I want to repeat it that 100% of the time, if you were ever sitting in or you're ever thinking in a suffering emotion, you're ever thinking in a disturbing emotion, 100% of the time you are making your brain worse. 100%. Another way to say it is you cannot ever think greater than how you feel. Another way to think it is if you're having a suffering emotion, you are living in the past because all of these suffering emotions are is just memories from the past. And so the point I want to go and say there is whenever you're having these suffering emotions, you're waiting for cause and effect. And what that means, just really quick, is you're waiting for the cause to happen. You're waiting for the money to come into your life before you feel abundant. You're waiting for the love, the relationship to come into your life before you feel the love. You're waiting for your um, you to accomplish something worthy before you can finally actually feel worthy. And that's cause and effect. The thing is that doesn't work. Period. Like that doesn't work. What it is it's to cause and have the effect, meaning you don't wait for the relationship to come into your life before you feel like this love. You don't wait for the money before you feel this abundance. You feel the abundance. Whenever you feel the abundance, like 100% guaranteed you have the abundance, that's whenever the money's coming. Whenever you feel the love, like the pure love, that's whenever the perfect match is being created. Whenever you feel whenever you feel the gratitude, that's whenever I know for a fact your healing is just starting to take place. And I stand this with 10 million% conviction. Nobody else can convince me otherwise, just because of what I've seen. And it's not just me talking. There's been so many study after study after study, like insane studies. So the question is this: is how can you go feel worthy whenever your whole entire life you've been told a story that you're not worthy? How can you feel worthy whenever you have never done anything worthy in your life? Like how can you feel worthy whenever like you have these stories constantly around your head that you're the exact opposite? Whenever you have no real evidence in your life that validates it, in fact, it validates the opposite, like how can you feel worthy? And I can say the same thing for love. I can say the same thing for abundance. I can say all those, but let's just use worthy. Whenever you have all these bad stories around your head, like how can you feel it? And my tip number one, I have 513,000 tips for this, by the way. But my tip number one, which by the way, can you guys hear me? Drop a two down below if you can hear me. Um, but tip number one is quit telling the story. Like quit telling the story. Like quit telling the story about why you're jaded. Quit telling the story about why you have to feel guilty. Quit telling the story about how these things never work for you. Quit telling the story about why you don't trust. Quit telling that story. Like stop telling the story. Like you don't need to go. If I were to ask somebody that is jaded, I'm like, hey, why are you jaded? Immediately what they would do is they would go to their brain and they would think about their past and a memory and bring that memory forward and feel this exact same emotion. Because whenever you go back to visit a memory, the body does not know what's real and what's not real. The body doesn't know whether you're doing it right now or you like it doesn't know. So your emotions is physically reliving the exact same event again. And all you have to do is condition your body is think about an emotion or think about just a thought, and then you feel an emotion. And you do it over and over, you condition your body. And that's why these people that you have panic attacks or anxiety attacks or whatever is because you condition your body so much. You condition the thought and the emotion, the thought and the emotion, the thought and the emotion. You condition that so much into your body to where your body, next thing you know, on autopilot's going to go on panic attacks and you can't tell when it's going to happen because your body's taken over subconsciously. Whenever you think about the image and then the emotion, the image and the emotion, all of a sudden you have these anxiety attacks. You wake up in the middle of the night because your body's taken over that conditioning because you conditioned it. So every single time you go back to tell the story, to explain why you can't trust, to explain why you don't have money, explain why you can't feel love, explain why your identity is why your identity is, to explain. The second you go back to the past to go explain this, number one, let me just tell you this. Do the recent studies, 50% of people, of memories that people talk about whenever they talk about their past, 50% is made up, like solely false. You don't even realize you're doing it, but 50% when people go recall memories are just made up. So whenever somebody says, you say, hey, why are you so jaded? Hey, why don't you trust? Like, hey, like, why don't you have the abundance in your life? Why don't you have the money? Whatever. Well, so what they do, they go back to their past, think about a story, and whenever they're thinking about that, they're feeling the emotion. And so again, they're conditioning their body to live in that emotion. Which, by the way, whenever you're thinking you're having these emotions, it doesn't just like think emotion. What it also does is drives behaviors. So if you have this thought of lack, you're going to feel the emotion of lack, which means you're going to take that's going to be portrayed out in your behavior. So it's this whole entire cycle. That's why so many times in the past people have the exact same people follow them from place to place, totally different people, but the exact same situation from job to job to job, a relationship to relationship. Like, why does that all keep happening over and over? Because it's the thought which provokes the emotion, which drives the behaviors, and is which, if you have the behaviors of producing lack, or the behaviors of not trusting, the behaviors of XYZ, it's going to put you in more situations. That's going to induce more thought, induce more patterns. Are you guys getting this? Drop down or get this if you guys get this. But the point of me saying this, so I ask, why are you jaded? Why can't you trust? Like, why are you skeptical? Well, because this happened back in 1983, and whenever this lady happened to me, the second I hear this, that's when I know that person. I'm like, wow, that is the moment that person quit growing. That's the moment the person quit evolving. Like, that's it. Like, they never did get past that emotion, and the emotion, like, is still going a month, 2 months, 5 years, 10 years, a lifetime ago. They never evolved past that emotion. So coming back is whenever you go back to go tell the story, this is where it gets funny. Whenever you go back to go tell the story about why you are the way you are, why your life is the way you are, you go back and recount and you tell the story, which whenever you tell the story, you think of thought, you feel the emotion, conditions the body to drive more thoughts and emotions that match it and more behaviors that match it. And the funny part is you have to tell this whole entire story. We tell this whole entire story as humans. That 50% is a lie. A lie. We make it worse than what it actually is just to confirm the identity of why we're jaded, why we can't trust, why we don't have money, why this hasn't happened, why we couldn't step into our potential. 50% is a lie just to confirm this identity of why this happened to us, why we are how we are. Like, what the heck? You know? And that's how we are as human species. So number one, I just want to honor the fact you're on here. You're awake and you and if, by the way, if you're on here looking at this, uh that says massive things about your evolution and where you're at, and the mind, the wavelengths you guys are on. But the tip number one I want to go say out of 513 tips is, step number one is, if you want to start bringing in that love, you want to start bringing in the money, you want to start bringing in the health, quit telling the story. Quit telling story. Like, quit telling the story of the past and start telling the story about the future. Start telling the story about, like, how you have this vitality, this energy, you're in the best shape of your life, you're in the best health of your life, to where you can go all day long. Like, start telling that story. Like, start romancing the future instead of romancing the past. Like, start telling a story about all your abundance and what you're gonna be doing with your wealth and your freedom and all this. Start telling that story. Start telling a story about the relationship. You're like totally obsessed with each other. Like, tell that story over and over and over. Like, quit romancing the past, romance the future. And if somebody doesn't have a vision of the future, all that tells me is they're just more in love with their past. They're just more in love with the feelings of guilt. They're more in love with the feeling of lack. They're more in love with that feeling of like, they're more in love with that. That's it. If you don't have a vision, period, it's just you're more in love with your past. And see, what happens is, why is a vision important? Let me just tell you in closing, is because the brain cannot tell what's real, what's not real. So whenever you have the vision, you're not waking up thinking about your problems, driving the same emotions, driving the same actions. You're not doing that, but you decide to, bam, think about the future and condition that emotion into your body. You start thinking about that. Then what happens is the brain can't think what's real, what's not real. And then you start conditioning that emotion. So you start conditioning the feeling of love. You start conditioning the feeling of happiness. You start conditioning the feeling of joy. You start conditioning the feeling of abundance. You start conditioning that, because whenever you start conditioning that emotion, it's going to drive more thoughts of abundance. It's going to drive more behaviors of abundance. And next thing you know, I'm telling you, listen closely to this. Next thing you know, you will not have to go out there and go look for the money. You won't have to go out there and go look for the relationship, because the relationship will find you. The money will find you, the opportunity will find you, the experience is not going to be out there. You're trying to go search for it. Whenever you're searching it for it, you're in lack and you're in separation from it because it's driving more emotion, more XYZ. You don't have to do anything besides sit there and smile. Once you actually feel it and you have the intention, sit there and smile because the experience is going to find you. Done. You got value, drop the word value down below, and I'll be coming back tomorrow with a couple more tips on this.